Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, and comment what you thought about the story. My stepdaughter kicked me out of the wedding because I refused to give her my house. My name is Narissa, and the part everyone keeps misunderstanding is that I didn't wake up one morning itching to ruin my stepdaughter's wedding. I had a job, a mortgage, a husband who snored like a broken lawnmower, and a house that smelled like coffee most mornings because I made the same cheap dark roast every day before driving to my office. Very glamorous, obviously. I worked as an administrative manager for a medium-sized company, which is a fancy way of saying I spent my days fixing problems people created by not reading emails. My husband worked as a supervisor at a warehouse. Steady hours, decent benefits, the kind of job where he came home tired and smelled faintly like cardboard and machine oil. We weren't rich. I want that said clearly because some people heard house and wedding money and decided I must have been sitting on piles of cash like some villain in a robe. No. I budgeted, I packed lunch, I waited for sales, I had a folder of receipts in my kitchen drawer because I am that woman. Annoying? Maybe. Alive financially? Also, yes. The house was mine before him. Not ours, but mostly mine, or technically mine but emotionally shared, or whatever soft little phrase people use when they want to blur a fact. Mine. I bought it years before I met him, when I was still renting a room in a place with a bathroom fan that screamed every time you turned on the light. I saved, I worked overtime, I signed the papers alone, and I spent the first month sleeping on a mattress on the floor because every dollar had gone into the down payment. By the time my husband moved in, the house already had my name on the deed, my name on the loan, my ugly little choices in the kitchen, and my panic attacks buried in the walls. He knew that. His daughter knew that. Everyone knew that, until suddenly it became inconvenient. His daughter was 22 when everything exploded, but I had known her since she was a teenager with chipped nail polish, a permanent scowl, and the talent of making me feel like a substitute teacher in my own living room. I never tried to replace her mother. I really didn't. I didn't call myself her mom, didn't push for cute bonding rituals, didn't demand Mother's Day cards, didn't do the whole "after all I've done for you" speech every time she forgot my birthday. I tried to be respectful. I drove her to appointments when her dad was working. I bought groceries when she came over and forgot she was staying for dinner. I helped her apply for a part-time job. I paid for a dress once when she cried in a fitting room because her mother promised to help and then vanished for 3 weeks. I did the boring support stuff, the unglamorous stuff, the kind nobody claps for. And she used me exactly as much as she needed to. I don't even say that with hatred now. At the time, it hurt like somebody pressing on a bruise. Back then, I told myself she was young. I told myself divorce makes kids weird. I told myself her mother being in and out of her life made her guarded, and if I just stayed steady, maybe one day she'd stop looking at me like I was a toll booth between her and what she wanted. Her dad always backed that up. She needs time, he would say. Time became this magical word in our house. Time for her to warm up. Time for her to mature. Time for her to see I cared. Meanwhile, she could text me, "Can you send money for groceries?" and then ignore my birthday message 2 days later. But sure. Time. Her biological mother was the kind of woman who appeared in emotional weather patterns, sometimes bright and loud and full of big promises, sometimes gone completely, sometimes storming in just long enough to knock over whatever fragile piece existed. She wasn't some cartoon monster. That's the annoying part. She could be funny. She could sound wounded in a way that made people soften around her. She'd show up saying she was trying. Life had been unfair. Everyone judged her too harshly. And then somehow leave with someone else's money, couch space, or patience. My stepdaughter loved her mother in that hungry way people love someone who keeps leaving. I understood it more than I wanted to. I still didn't enjoy being punished for it. For years, our arrangement worked because nobody asked too much out loud. My stepdaughter came by when she needed something. My husband played peacemaker. I swallowed tiny insults with dinner. She would thank her father for things I paid for, and he would look at me across the table with those tired eyes like, "Please don't start." So I didn't start. Yes, I stayed quiet too often. Don't yell at me. I have yelled at myself plenty. I thought being the adult meant taking the hit and keeping the house calm. I thought patience was the same thing as strength. It isn't always. Sometimes patience is just fear wearing comfortable shoes. When she got engaged, I honestly wanted to be happy for her. I mean that. She had moved into a small rented apartment with her fiancé, who worked as a maintenance technician and seemed like a decent guy. Quiet, polite, a little too eager to agree with whatever she said, but not cruel. She was working part-time as an attendant at a local place, still figuring herself out. still leaning on her dad more than she admitted. The engagement happened on a weekend, and my husband came home smiling like he'd personally invented marriage. He kept saying, "My little girl is getting married," even though she was grown and could make a grown woman feel like expired milk with one look. I made dinner that night, poured us both a drink, and listened to him talk about venues, dresses, flowers, all of it. I remember thinking, this could be good. Maybe a wedding will soften things. Cute thought. Absolutely stupid, but cute. At first, the wedding talk felt normal. Expensive, yes, because weddings apparently are where common sense goes to be buried in lace, but normal. My husband said that as the father of the bride, he wanted to contribute. I expected that. I wasn't shocked. I told him we could help with a set amount, something meaningful, but not reckless, and that anything beyond that could not come out of my savings or my cards. I even wrote it down because that's how I keep myself from panic spending. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and said, "You're good to us." I hate remembering that sentence because I believed it. I believed he saw me as a partner, not a backup wallet with legs. Then her mother lost wherever she had been staying. The details were foggy, as they always were with her. One story involved a roommate being toxic, another involved rent going up, another involved someone betraying her. The actual truth probably had bills in it, but nobody wanted to dig that deep. She asked to stay at my stepdaughter's apartment for a few days, just until she got settled. A few days became a week. A week became several weeks. Suddenly, the small apartment had my stepdaughter, her fiancé, and her mother sleeping on the couch, commenting on everything like she was an unpaid wedding consultant with a grudge. That's when the tone changed. My stepdaughter started saying things she had never quite said before. Not directly at first, just little comments dropped like crumbs. It must be nice to have all that space. Some people get a head start and some people don't. Family is supposed to help you start your life. I heard them, obviously. I'm not a lamp, but I still thought it was stress. Wedding stress, money stress, cramped apartment stress, mother whispering in her ear stress. I had a whole menu of excuses ready because I was very committed to not seeing the giant mess walking toward me. The first big upgrade was the venue. The original place was a modest little hall attached to a community center. Nothing fancy, but clean, affordable, and honestly cute once you added lights and flowers. Then suddenly it was too sad. That was the phrase, too sad. My husband came home and said they had found a nicer banquet room at a private event space. "It's not that much more," he said. People who say that are usually lying to themselves first. It was much more. Still, he looked so hopeful, and he kept saying this was his only daughter. And I felt myself doing the thing I always did, adjusting my boundary so nobody else had to feel uncomfortable. After that, every decision became a finished fact before I heard about it. The buffet changed because you can't serve basic food at a wedding. The photographer changed because memories matter. The dress budget expanded because she deserves to feel beautiful. Every time, the conversation came through my husband, not her. He would stand in the kitchen while I cut vegetables or unloaded groceries and say, "Just so you know," like he was giving me a weather report, not asking for more of my money. And because the amounts came in chunks, and most of them were being put on accounts or cards I controlled, I let them pass. A little here, a little there. Death by tiny invoices. Her mother, meanwhile, got bolder. She came to our house once for dinner because my husband thought it would be nice if everyone could be civil. I should have faked food poisoning. She sat at my table, ate the chicken I made, and said, "This house has such good energy. It would be perfect for young people starting out." I laughed because I thought she was making some awkward compliment. She didn't laugh back. My stepdaughter stared at her plate. My husband suddenly became fascinated by the salt shaker. That was one of those moments where your body knows something before your brain is ready. My stomach tightened, but I smiled anyway. I hate that I smiled. Later, when I mentioned it to my husband, he brushed it off. "She talks nonsense." Okay, fine, she did. But nonsense becomes a problem when everyone starts repeating it. A few days after that dinner, my stepdaughter texted me a picture of a listing for a house across town with a crying face. Like we were girlfriends complaining about rent. Then she wrote, "We'll never have anything like this." I wrote back, "Most people start small." She didn't answer for hours. When she did, it was just, "Must be nice." I know that sounds small. It wasn't. It was the sound of a line being tested. I finally sat down with all the charges one Thursday night after work, because my checking account had started giving me that cold, buzzy feeling. You know when you open your banking app and your soul leaves for a second? That. I made a spreadsheet because apparently that's my emotional support animal. The total was already way over what I had agreed to contribute. Not a little over. Not, oops, flowers cost more than expected over. It was, how did I let this happen while making eye contact with my own common sense over? I sat there in my work pants, still wearing my office shoes, staring at the number until the screen went blurry. When my husband came home, I didn't ease into it. I didn't make dinner first. I didn't do the soft wife voice. I turned my laptop around and said, "This stops now." He looked at the number, rubbed his face, and said, "I know." "No, you don't know," I said. "Because if you knew, you would have stopped asking before we got here." He started with the usual words. Stress. Only daughter. Big day. Her mother making things harder. He said he felt guilty because he had missed parts of her childhood while working too much and fighting with her mother. And I get guilt. I do. Guilt makes people stupid. But guilt paid with my money was starting to feel less like love and more like theft with sad music behind it. I told him there would be one final limit. No more upgrades, no more small extra payments, no more emergency deposits. He agreed, verbally. That matters later because he agreed in the kitchen, in front of me, with the laptop open and the total staring at him like a judge. Then he apparently placed that agreement in the same imaginary drawer where he kept all the hard conversations he didn't want to have with his daughter. For almost 2 weeks, I thought maybe we had corrected course. The wedding talk quieted down. My stepdaughter sent a polite thank you message for everything so far, which I now realize was the emotional equivalent of someone patting a dog before stealing its food bowl. But at the time, I was relieved. I let myself believe the worst was over. I even bought a simple dress for the wedding, dark green, nothing dramatic, because I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. I tried it on in my bedroom and turned sideways in the mirror, thinking, maybe this will be okay. That sentence should be illegal. Every time I think it, something awful happens. The message came on a Tuesday night while I was folding laundry. Not during a fight, not after some big dramatic buildup. Just my phone buzzing on top of a pile of towels like it had every right to ruin my life. It was from my stepdaughter, directly, not through her dad. She wrote that she had been thinking about her future, about how hard things were for young couples, about how she and her fiancé were starting with nothing, and how I had always said I wanted to support her. Then came the sentence that made me stop breathing for a second. She wanted the house as her wedding gift, not help with rent, not a down payment contribution, not temporary support. The house, my house, the one I bought before her father even learned which side of the bed I sleep on. I stared at the message so long the towels cooled in my hands. Then I typed, "Are you joking?" I didn't add a smiley thing. I didn't soften it. I genuinely needed to know if maybe she had been drinking wine with her mother and lost her mind in a temporary way. Her reply came fast. "No, if you really see me as family, this shouldn't be weird. This shouldn't be weird." I actually laughed out loud in the laundry room, and not a cute laugh. A cracked laugh. The kind that makes you sound like a raccoon with student loans. I wrote back, "I am not giving you my house." She replied, "Then don't come to the wedding." Just like that. Years of rides and grocery money and swallowed insults and quiet attempts at peace reduced to one little threat glowing on my phone. I remember sitting on the floor because my knees felt strange. Dramatic? Maybe. But there are moments when your body gets the truth before your pride does. I felt used. I felt stupid. I felt like every time I had chosen patience, she had counted it as weakness. And under that, humiliatingly, I felt jealous. Not of her wedding, not of her youth, of how easily she could demand from people. I had spent my whole life trying not to be a burden, and here she was asking for a whole house like she was requesting extra frosting. When my husband got home, I was waiting at the kitchen table with the phone in front of me. Very calm looking. Not calm. Calm looking is just rage with better posture. I handed him the phone. "Read it." He read it once, then again. His face changed, but not enough. That was the first real crack in my marriage, I think. Not the message itself. His face. The hesitation. The way he didn't immediately say, "Absolutely not, she's out of line, I'm handling this." He just stood there with my phone in his hand like it had become heavy. "Well?" I said. He rubbed his forehead. "She's emotional." I almost levitated. "She asked for my house." "I know. She threatened to uninvite me from a wedding I'm paying for." "I know, Narissa." "Then why are you saying it like she forgot to say please?" He flinched. Good. I wanted him to flinch. I wanted my words to land somewhere. He said she was his only daughter, and he had already lost too much time with her, and her mother was getting in her head, and maybe we could all sit down and talk. I asked him one direct question, because sometimes you need to stop letting people hide behind fog. Are you considering giving her my house? He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, I need time to think. That answer broke something in me so cleanly I didn't even cry right away. I just nodded. Small nod. Terrifying nod, probably. I took my phone back and said, You have two choices. She takes back the demand and I am welcome at that wedding with a real apology, or I stop paying. Completely. He said, Don't make this an ultimatum. I said, She made it an ultimatum. I'm just answering. He promised he would talk to her. He promised he would fix it. He used that husband voice, the tired, reasonable voice that had worked on me for years because I wanted peace more than I wanted proof. But this time I wanted proof. I wanted a text, a call, a real apology. Anything that showed someone in that family understood I was a person and not a resource. Days passed. Nothing. He kept saying, I'm working on it. What does that even mean? Working on it where? In a secret emotional workshop? He went to work, came home, avoided the topic, and looked wounded whenever I brought it up. My stepdaughter didn't text me. Her mother definitely didn't text me, though I had no doubt she was somewhere on that apartment couch explaining how I had shown my true colors. I went to my office and made schedules and approved supply orders and answered emails while my personal life sat in the corner of my brain chewing through drywall. At night, I reread the messages. Obsessively. I know that's not healthy. I know a normal, balanced person would have saved screenshots and moved on. I am not always that person. I zoomed in on her words like they might rearrange into something less ugly. If you really see me as family, don't come to the wedding. I started thinking about every time she had accepted my help without affection, every time my husband had asked me to be patient, every time her mother had floated around the edges of our life like smoke, and somehow made me cough. Then one afternoon, during lunch at my desk, I opened the wedding message group to check a detail about the rehearsal dinner. It was gone. Not quiet, not inactive. Gone. I searched. Nothing. I thought maybe my phone was glitching because denial makes fools of us all. Then I asked my husband, very casually, Did the wedding group get deleted? He looked down at his plate. We were eating leftover pasta in the kitchen. I remember that because I suddenly hated the pasta, which was unfair because the pasta had done nothing. He said, They started a new one. They? He didn't answer fast enough. Am I in it? He sighed, not guilty, irritated, like I had discovered something rude by being observant. Narissa, please. That's when I understood. No apology was coming, no correction, no adult conversation. They had made their decision and expected me to keep paying anyway, because I had always been the person who cleaned up after everyone else's feelings. I didn't scream. I wanted to. I wanted to throw the bowl at the wall and make a scene large enough for him to finally respect. Instead, I stood up, scraped the pasta into the trash, and said, Okay. He followed me down the hallway. What does okay mean? It means okay. Narissa. It means I'm done. The next morning, I called a lawyer from my car before work. I sat in the parking lot with my coffee going cold in the cup holder, wearing a blouse I had buttoned wrong because apparently emotional collapse affects fashion. The lawyer listened while I explained the house, the wedding payments, the messages, the removal from the group. She didn't gasp. Lawyers never gasp. She just asked clean, practical questions. Whose name was on the contracts? Whose card was being charged? What had already been paid? What could still be canceled? Did I have screenshots? Yes, 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 yes. And absolutely yes, because I may be a fool, but I am a documented fool. That day, I spent my lunch break and half my afternoon calling vendors. I canceled only the contracts I had signed, guaranteed, or paid through my own accounts. I didn't touch anything they had paid for directly. I didn't call the venue pretending to be the bride. I didn't do some sneaky villain thing. I simply removed my money from a wedding I had been removed from. Some deposits were gone. Fine. Painful, but fine. The bigger payments that hadn't processed yet, I stopped. I sent written notices. I asked for confirmation emails. I forwarded everything to the lawyer. By the end of the day, I had a folder so organized it could have applied for a job. And yes, there was a moment where I sat in a bathroom stall at work and cried silently because the florist on the phone had been kind to me. Kindness is very dangerous when you're trying to stay angry. She said, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. And I almost fell apart next to the hand dryer. When it was done, I texted my husband one sentence. I had drafted paragraphs. Oh, I had paragraphs. Angry ones. Elegant ones. Ones that would have made me look smart and wounded and morally superior. I deleted them all and sent. I didn't cancel her wedding. I stopped paying for a wedding I was removed from. He called immediately. I didn't answer. He called again. I watched the phone buzz on the counter while making tea I didn't drink. Then my stepdaughter called. Then her mother. Then my husband again. The house sounded like a beehive trapped inside glass. When he came home, he was red-faced and shaking. Not violent. Just furious and scared and honestly offended that consequences had arrived without asking his permission. "What did you do?" he said. "I protected myself. You humiliated her. She tried to take my house. She didn't mean it like that. She wrote it like that." He said the venue needed the next deposit and the photographer had already been told everything was confirmed and people had booked travel. He said her fiancé's family was excited. He said I had thrown a grenade into the middle of everything. That one made me laugh, and I know laughing was not mature, but please picture a grown man accusing me of destruction because I stopped funding a party after being uninvited from it. The comedy was dark, but it was there. I said, "Then she can invite the house to the wedding. Maybe the house will bring a check." Not my finest line. Still kind of proud. The next few days were ugly in that regular family way, where nobody is physically in danger, but everyone acts like emotional murder is occurring in real time. My stepdaughter showed up at the house on a Saturday morning, pounding on the door like rent was due. Her father was already there because he had barely slept. I opened the door in sweatpants, hair still wet from the shower, and she started screaming before I could say hello. "You ruined everything," I said. "Good morning to you too." She called me selfish, bitter, jealous, controlling. She said I had never wanted her to have a nice wedding. She said I had waited for an excuse to hurt her because I was mad she didn't call me mom. That one hit. Not because it was true, but because it was the kind of lie built around a tiny, tender thing. Of course it hurt that she never saw me as family except when money was involved. Of course it did. I am not made of office supplies. I held up my phone with the screenshot. "You told me not to come if I didn't give you my house." She rolled her eyes so hard I wanted to send her a bill for the disrespect. That wasn't literal. You asked for a literal house. I was upset. And I was generous. We all have past tense problems now. Her father snapped at me to be the adult. That phrase again, be the adult. As if adulthood means standing still while someone empties your pockets and then thanking them for expressing themselves. I turned to him and said, "Being the adult doesn't mean being treated like a wallet." Her face changed when I said wallet. Not shame exactly. More like exposure. Her mother, I later learned, had been saying that word at the apartment, joking that I had wallet energy. Cute, right? Very family. The practical consequences hit fast. The expensive event space required a deposit they couldn't cover without me. The photographer they wanted moved on to another couple after the payment failed. The caterer offered a smaller package, which my stepdaughter called embarrassing, because apparently feeding people within your means is a public tragedy. The guest list had to be cut from more than 150 people to something much smaller. Guests who had requested time off work or arranged travel started getting awkward messages. My stepdaughter blamed me in every version. Her mother blamed me and also my husband and also society, somehow. My husband blamed me in private and then begged me in public to reconsider because he didn't like how blame felt when it touched him. The fiancé's family started asking questions. That was the part none of them planned for. They had been told there would be a big wedding, nice venue, full dinner, all the little extras. Then suddenly cousins were uninvited, the location was uncertain, and the story became the stepmother pulled funding. People can accept that once, maybe twice. But when the details keep shifting, normal adults start sniffing the air. The fiancé called my husband first, not me. I only know because my husband came home after that call looking like someone had handed him a bill for his own cowardice. The fiancé wanted to know why I had been removed from the wedding group. My husband said it was a misunderstanding. The fiancé asked what misunderstanding. My husband said emotions were high. The fiancé asked whose emotions required removing the person paying major deposits. My husband didn't enjoy that question. Meanwhile, my stepdaughter's apartment had become a pressure cooker. Her fiancé was still going to work every day, fixing other people's broken sinks and heating units and whatever else, then coming home to his fiancée crying at the kitchen table, her mother sleeping on the couch, and my husband showing up to support them like one more adult body in a place that already couldn't breathe. Nobody had privacy. Nobody had money. Everybody had opinions. A dream home had somehow become part of the wedding conversation, and the person who owned that dream home had shut the door. I stayed out of it as much as my personality allowed, which means I stayed out of it publicly and spiraled privately. I checked my phone too much. I asked myself if I had gone too far. Then I would reread the house message and get angry all over again. I talked to my lawyer. I changed passwords on vendor accounts and personal accounts because I didn't trust the emotional atmosphere around me. I moved some documents into a lockbox. That sounds dramatic, but when your husband pauses after being asked whether he's considering giving away your house, you develop new hobbies. At home, my husband and I moved around each other like roommates who had once shared vows by accident. He slept on the edge of the bed. I slept facing the wall. We spoke about trash pickup, mail, and whether the dishwasher had been run. Nothing else felt safe. One night, he said, "You could still fix this." I was brushing my teeth, foam in my mouth, hair clipped up, wearing an old shirt with a bleach spot. Very dignified setting for the collapse of a marriage. I spit into the sink and said, "Fix what?" "The wedding." "You mean pay." "I mean help." "No, you mean pay." He leaned on the bathroom doorframe and looked exhausted. "She's falling apart." "So am I." He didn't know what to do with that. I think because my falling apart was inconvenient. His daughter's pain had a whole soundtrack in his head. Mine was just background noise. A few days later, he packed a bag, not dramatically. No slammed drawers, just socks, work shirts, toiletries, the sad little items that make separation feel embarrassingly domestic. He said he was going to stay with his daughter for a while because she needed him and because maybe space would help me cool down. Cool down. Like I was a casserole. I stood in the bedroom doorway and watched him zip the bag. Part of me wanted to beg him not to go. I hate admitting that. I wanted him to choose me without being asked. I wanted him to turn around and say, "This got out of hand, I am sorry, I will fix it." Instead, he took his bag and kissed my forehead like I was a difficult patient. I filed for divorce that week. Not because I stopped loving him in one clean motion. I wish it worked like that. I filed because love had started asking me to participate in my own erasure. My lawyer kept it simple. The house was mine from before the marriage, documented, boring, not some dramatic courtroom battle waiting to happen. There were shared expenses to unwind, money lost and wedding payments to address, and the unpleasant business of proving that I had not randomly sabotaged a wedding out of jealousy. I had texts. I had contracts. I had receipts. I had the kind of boring paper trail that saves women when feelings start lying. When my husband found out, he called me from the apartment. I could hear noise behind him. My stepdaughter crying or arguing, her mother talking over someone, a door closing. He sounded smaller than he had in years. "You filed?" "Yes." "So that's it?" I almost said, "Apparently that's what you wanted when you moved out." I didn't. Growth? Exhaustion? Hard to tell. I said, "You left to support someone who tried to pressure me out of my home. She is my daughter. And I was your wife." Silence. The kind where both people know the sentence is too true to argue with. He said, "Her mother manipulated her." I know. Then why punish her like this? That made my chest burn. I didn't punish her. I stopped rewarding it. He hated that. I could hear it. He said I knew how unstable her mother was, and that this could have been our chance to give his daughter stability. I said stability built on stealing mine wasn't stability. It was relocation. The wedding limped forward for a little while after that, like a shopping cart with one bad wheel. The venue changed again. The guest list shrank again. My stepdaughter found a cheaper dress after the custom bridal dress was canceled because the final payment didn't go through. That dress became its own tragedy. She posted vague things on a social media app about people showing their true colors. Her mother commented supportive nonsense about real family, which was rich from a woman currently living on her daughter's couch while encouraging her to demand other people's property. Her fiancé, from what I heard through my husband at first and later from him directly, was starting to ask real questions. He had accepted the story that I was difficult because it was easier. I don't fully blame him for that. He was in love. He wanted the wedding. He liked the idea of a nice party too. He wasn't some innocent saint floating above the mess. He ignored plenty because it benefited him until it didn't. That's very human. Not admirable, but human. Living with my stepdaughter, her mother, and sometimes my husband in that small apartment apparently killed the fantasy quickly. The fiancé started noticing that every solution involved someone else paying. He noticed that her mother had opinions but no money. He noticed that my husband looked guilty whenever the house came up. He noticed that when he asked why I had been excluded, nobody gave the same answer twice. First I had created drama. Then I had made her feel unsupported. Then I had misunderstood a joke. Then the message was taken out of context. Funny how context always disappears right before accountability shows up. A few weeks before the wedding date, everything cracked. I wasn't there, thank heaven. I got the summary later from my husband in fragments and then from the fiancé with more honesty. The fiancé had come home from work early because a job got canceled. He walked into an argument between my stepdaughter and her mother. Her mother was saying something like, "You should have pushed harder before she got lawyers involved." And my stepdaughter was crying, saying, "I did, and now everything is ruined." He asked, "Pushed harder for what?" Silence. Then yelling. Then the house came out. Not in the cleaned-up version, the real version. The "if she wanted to be family, she'd give it to us" version. The "she doesn't need all that space" version. The "your father could have convinced her if he wasn't so weak" version. When my husband told me that part, he sounded ashamed for maybe the first time. Not sorry exactly. Shame is quieter and more self-focused. But it was there. The fiancé called off the wedding within days. No long speech. No dramatic altar scene. Just a private decision that became public faster than anyone could control. He told my stepdaughter he couldn't marry into a situation where money, housing, and guilt were all tangled like that before the marriage had even started. He said he had ignored warning signs because he wanted the day, the pictures, the idea of being married. He also admitted he didn't want to spend years being expected to rescue her mother too. Harsh? Yes. Unfair? Not entirely. My stepdaughter lost it. I heard she begged, then screamed, then blamed her mother, then blamed me, then blamed her father. Her mother blamed the fiancé for being weak, and me for being selfish, and my husband for not leading his household, which would have been funny if it weren't so disgusting. My husband stayed in the apartment through the first part of the aftermath, sleeping on the couch sometimes while the woman who helped blow up his daughter's engagement took up the other couch space like a tragic queen. The apartment was too small for that much denial. When the wedding was officially canceled, people started comparing stories. Guests who had been cut from the list talked to guests who had stayed on it. Her fiancé's family heard about the house. My stepdaughter tried to control the narrative, but canceled weddings create a vacuum, and gossip hates a vacuum. I didn't spread anything at first. I know that sounds noble, but it was partly because I was too tired. Also because my lawyer had advised me to keep my mouth shut in writing, and for once in my life I obeyed helpful advice. Still, silence doesn't mean nothing happens. My husband called me more often after the wedding collapsed. At first, he framed everything as concern for his daughter. Then he started asking how I was. Too late, but there it was. He said the apartment was unbearable. He said her mother and his daughter were fighting constantly. He said he could see now that the house request was serious. I remember standing in my kitchen, listening to him say that, and feeling this weird blankness. I had wanted him to see it so badly, and when he finally did, it didn't heal anything. It just made me angrier that he had required a full emotional explosion to notice the obvious. One evening, he said, "I think I made a mistake leaving." I said, "You made a mistake before leaving." He went quiet. I added, because apparently I still had some cruelty in storage, "Leaving was just the part with luggage." I regretted that later. A little. Not enough to apologize. The fiancé contacted me a few days after the cancellation. I recognized the number because it had been saved from old wedding planning texts, back when everyone still pretended we were one big awkward team. His message was careful. He said he was sorry for bothering me, sorry for believing things about me, and sorry for not asking sooner. I stared at it for a while because apologies from people adjacent to harm are strange. They don't fix anything, but they do move the air around. I agreed to a phone call. I don't know why, maybe because I wanted one person in that circus to say the truth without trying to borrow money afterward. He sounded embarrassed. He told me he hadn't known about the house at first. He had believed my stepdaughter when she said I had promised more support, and then pulled it away to hurt her. He admitted he didn't question it because he liked the upgraded wedding too. I appreciated that, actually. Not because it made him look good, but because it made him sound real. Then he told me what he had heard. Her mother had been pushing the idea for weeks, maybe longer. She had been telling my stepdaughter that I had more than I needed, that my husband had earned a claim to my home by living there, that a real stepmother would want to help her child start a life. She painted it as emotional justice, not greed. Like my stepdaughter asking for the house would somehow heal every missed birthday, every broken promise from her own mother, every uncomfortable year of being caught between households. That's the nasty genius of manipulation. It doesn't say, "Take this woman's property." It says, "You deserve proof that you're loved." But he was clear about something else, too. My stepdaughter wasn't a helpless child. She typed the message. She threatened to exclude me. She lied about it afterward. She let him believe I had randomly attacked the wedding. She enjoyed the bigger plans while the money flowed. Her mother may have lit the match, but my stepdaughter carried it into the room. I listened with my phone pressed to my ear, sitting on the floor beside my bed like a teenager. I felt vindicated and sick at the same time. Vindication is not as satisfying as people think. Sometimes it just means your worst suspicion finally has paperwork. He said he had copies of some messages between them. Not all, but enough to show the pressure and the arguments. He offered to save them in case I needed them. I thanked him. Then I did something petty but honest. I asked, "Were you ever going to tell me if the wedding had gone ahead?" He paused. "Probably not." "Yeah," I said. "That's what I thought." He apologized again. I accepted it in the limited way you accept an apology from someone who was not the main knife but still stood near the drawer. After that call, I sent everything to my lawyer. She used the fiancé's account as context, not as some explosive courtroom weapon. This wasn't a crime show. Nobody burst into a hearing with shocking evidence while music played. It was emails, screenshots, payment records, boring legal letters, and me learning that divorce is mostly waiting while being emotionally flayed by PDFs. The house stayed out of serious dispute because it had been mine before the marriage, with clean documentation. My husband knew pushing for it would look ridiculous. His lawyer knew it too. The real fight became money, shared expenses, and whether I could recover some of what I lost on the wedding deposits. My husband initially hinted that he might need support after the divorce. That lasted about as long as a cheap umbrella in a storm once the facts were laid out. He had a steady job. He wasn't financially dependent on me. He had moved out voluntarily to sleep on a couch in his daughter's apartment, because apparently men in crisis love making their spines suffer. His lawyer must have told him not to be foolish, because that demand faded quickly. What remained was uglier in a quieter way, him trying to turn emotional guilt into negotiation leverage. He wrote once, "I know things went too far, but you know I was trying to protect my child." I wrote back, "You were protecting her from consequences by giving her access to me?" Then I deleted 3 more sentences because my lawyer had asked me gently to stop writing like every text might be my final speech on earth. My stepdaughter tried to contact me once during negotiations through a new number after I blocked the old one. The message was long, messy, and not quite an apology. She said her mother had been in her ear. She said she felt scared about the future. She said seeing me in that house while she struggled made her feel like life was unfair. She said she might have said things wrong. Might have. As if the sentence, "Give me your house or don't come," had slipped and fallen out of her phone. I didn't respond. I showed the message to my lawyer, then saved it, then stared at it for way too long. Part of me wanted to write back, "I know life is unfair. That doesn't make me your compensation package." Another part wanted to say, "I cared about you, you little brat, and you made caring feel dirty." I said nothing because silence was the only adult behavior I had left in stock. I met him once in person before the agreement was finalized. Public place, early evening, a small coffee shop with bad lighting and decent pastries. I wore the green dress I had bought for the wedding, which was either poetic or petty, and since I don't do poetic, let's call it petty. He noticed. His face did that sad, soft thing that used to work on me. He said, "You look nice." I said, "Don't start with nice. We'll both get confused." He actually laughed a little. Then he cried, quietly. I had seen him cry only a few times before. He said he was sorry. Not the defensive sorry from earlier. A realer one, though still tangled with excuses. He said he had been scared of losing his daughter. He said her mother knew exactly how to trigger that fear. He said when his daughter asked for the house, he should have shut it down immediately. He said he failed me. I wanted that sentence months earlier. I wanted it in the kitchen with my phone in his hand. I wanted it before the vendor calls, before the lawyer, before he moved out, before I learned how cold my house could feel. By the time he said it, the apology arrived like groceries after the dinner already burned. I said, "I believe you're sorry." He reached across the table. I didn't take his hand. "I don't believe you're safe for me anymore." That was the simplest truth I had. Not that he was evil, not that I hated him, not that he had never loved me, just that when pressure came, he had considered making me smaller to make his daughter feel whole. I couldn't unknow that. He asked for a second chance. He said we could do counseling. He said his daughter had learned her lesson. I laughed at that, not cruelly, just tired. Your daughter learned that pushing too hard can cost her things? That's not the same as learning she was wrong. He didn't have an answer. The agreement took a few more months because paperwork moves like it has a personal grudge against closure. In the end, I kept the house fully, which was always the strongest legal reality, but still felt good to see in writing. Through the divorce agreement, I recovered part of the wedding money, not all. Some vendor deposits were gone forever. I accepted that as the tuition I paid for a class called Stop Ignoring Red Flags Because Dinner is Peaceful. Expensive course. Wouldn't recommend. The shared accounts were separated. His things were picked up in 2 awkward visits while I stayed at work, and a friend sat at the house because I didn't trust myself to watch him carry boxes and not emotionally combust. My stepdaughter and her mother had their own collapse. From what I heard, the apartment situation finally ended when the fiancé moved out fully and removed his name from whatever he could. My stepdaughter couldn't afford the place alone. Her mother accused her of being ungrateful after everything she had done, which is hilarious if your sense of humor has been damaged by trauma. They fought so badly that neighbors complained. No police drama, no grand scene, just ordinary miserable yelling through thin walls. Her mother eventually left to stay with a cousin in another city, which was classic her. Arrive, stir the pot, eat the food, sleep on the couch, vanish when consequences asked for rent. My stepdaughter moved into a smaller shared place with someone from work. My husband, or my almost ex-husband at that point, helped her with the move. He told me this in a text I didn't answer. I didn't need the update. I think he sent it because he still wanted me to see him as a good father. Maybe he was trying to see himself that way. I don't know. People can be sincere and selfish at the same time. That was one of the worst lessons of the whole thing. Before the divorce was finalized, my stepdaughter sent one last message from yet another number. I was making soup when it came in, because life loves putting major emotional events next to onions. It said, "I never wanted to take your house. I just thought you cared enough to help me start my life." I read it twice. Then a third time because apparently I enjoy pain in installments. The wording was smoother than her usual style, so I suspected her mother had influenced it or maybe she had practiced it in her notes. It still wasn't an apology. It was a reframe. It made the demand sound like a love test I had failed. It made my refusal sound like coldness instead of survival. I felt that old tug in my chest, the one that used to make me explain myself until I was exhausted and someone else felt clean. This time, I didn't bite. I blocked the number. Then I stirred the soup too hard and splashed broth on the stove. Very powerful, very healed, obviously. The divorce signing itself was almost insultingly ordinary. No thunder, no dramatic speech, just a conference room, pens, papers, my lawyer, his lawyer, and 2 people who once shared a bed sitting across from each other like polite strangers. My husband looked older. I probably did too. He asked if I was sure before I signed the final page. I looked at him for a second, and I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to say I missed who I thought he was. I wanted to say I hated him for making me choose myself so late. I wanted to say I hoped his daughter grew up before she taught someone else how to leave. I said, yes. Afterward, I drove home and sat in my driveway for a while. Not crying, not celebrating, just sitting. The house looked the same from the outside. Same porch light, same uneven little walkway I kept meaning to fix. Same front window with the blinds slightly crooked because I never measured anything right. It looked almost rude, how unchanged it was. Inside, though, everything felt different because nobody could pretend anymore. The house had been the thing they wanted, the thing they tested me over, the thing my husband hesitated to defend. And now it was quiet. Mine, and weirdly innocent. A house can't betray you. People just use walls as excuses. My ex-husband and I barely speak now. There are no children between us, no shared house, no reason to keep reopening the wound. Occasionally something residual comes up through lawyers or paperwork, but even that has faded. He sent me a message around the first holiday after the divorce saying he hoped I was doing well. I stared at it for a while, then wrote, I am. Not, thank you. Not, same to you. Just I am. It felt rude and perfect. I don't know exactly what happened to my stepdaughter after that, beyond small pieces that drifted through people who still know people. She kept working. She and the ex-fiancé didn't get back together. His family stayed distant, which I can't blame them for. Losing a wedding is one thing. Learning the wedding almost came with a house shakedown is another. She and her mother apparently still have a messy relationship, because of course they do. People don't become emotionally healthy because one plan fails. They just lose that particular plan. As for the house, it is still mine. That sentence sounds simple, but it holds so much. I wake up there. I drink my cheap coffee. I pay the mortgage. I complain about repairs. I sit on the porch sometimes after work and listen to the neighborhood settle down. Nobody in the living room is hinting that I have too much. Nobody at my table is eating my food while calculating what proof of love they can squeeze out of me. Nobody is asking me to be the adult while they behave like consequences are a hate crime. The wedding didn't fall apart because I stopped paying. It fell apart because too many people built it on entitlement, guilt, and silence, and then acted shocked when the floor gave way. My stepdaughter wanted a house to prove I loved her. My husband wanted peace without confrontation. Her mother wanted security through someone else's sacrifice. And me? I wanted to be loved without having to invoice my own boundaries. For a long time, I confused being useful with being accepted. I confused keeping calm with being respected. I confused staying with being chosen. And if anybody ever asks me for my house as a wedding gift again, I promise you, I will not be folding towels on the laundry room floor wondering if they meant it. I will simply laugh, lock my door, and protect the life I built before they ever thought they could take it.